Welcome to Not Just a Transaction, the podcast series hosted by experienced real estate authorities Nick Prefontaine and Zachary Beach. Each week, the hosts bring you expert guests to help you navigate the many creative options available for buying or selling a home, while cutting out the costly hurdles of a conventional real estate deal. Good afternoon and welcome everyone to another episode of Not Just a Transaction, the home buyers and sellers podcast. Now, today we have a very special guest that's going to be joining us, Denise Rossi. Now, Denise is very special in the regard of to Pre-Property Solutions, that is, because we've actually worked with her as a buyer of one of our rent-owned homes, and then on the sell side. So we also helped her in purchasing a condo that she had up in the Boston area. And now Denise is doing the same thing. She's helping buyers and sellers out there to do the same thing. Now, having gone through issues which many others have to deal with when trying to sell and to buy, they were just frustrated by the state of the current real estate and finance market. After finding a way to solve their problems by both buying a home with us through our rent-to-own program and selling a property with us, meaning that we bought their property, they decided that this was for them and they really wanted to jump into it and start helping other people realize the great potential that this had. So Denise, with that, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Nick. Thank you for having me.
Well, Denise, we always like to start off these recordings and these shows by asking our guests to tell us a little bit about who you are, other than the illustrious bio that I read.
Okay, so I'm Denise Rossi. My husband and I started getting into the lease option, as Nick had alluded to, lease option world, because we found ourselves in this situation. We had young twins. We had a small condo in the city. We wanted to move out. We couldn't, for various reasons, unload it immediately. So finding out that there was a way to sell it, essentially sell it, but not have it close immediately was beneficial to us. We weren't able to move on without that. So it was really, really helpful for us to have happened upon it. And we really ended up happening upon it because we were looking for a property to move into. And we happened onto one of your properties. And in that, we realized there was potential for us to buy the property from you and also sell the property that we wanted to unload. So it was really a win-win in both scenarios. They both closed pretty close together, which worked out really well for us. We, we got out to the suburbs, which was what our goal was with two young twins. The city life was great when it was just myself and then just my husband and I, but that's not where we wanted to raise a family. So yeah, that's how we ended up essentially in the business.
Well, that's awesome, and there are a few nuances involved in that. So why weren't, tell the listeners about, if you don't mind sharing, why weren't you able to conventionally buy, and then why weren't you able to conventionally sell?
Okay, so I was actually coming out of a bankruptcy, and because of the bankruptcy, any profit that I would have made in the sale, and I had I bought the house when I was single, the condo, I had rehabbed it, I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in that place, and any profit that I would have made, I would have lost because of the bankruptcy. So I really needed a way to be able to move on and buy without all of that equity that I had in the house, which is why I ended up being able to purchase with you. I was able to put some money down and delay that purchase till we were in a position where we could use that equity.
That's awesome. And I think it's important for all the listeners out there, the sellers in particular, just because someone has a life change and has to declare bankruptcy doesn't mean they're necessarily bad people. Denise had a few things that were going on in her life where that was the best option at the time. And coming out of that, now she's helping buyers and sellers just like us. So it doesn't necessarily mean, I think it's good for the sellers to hear. It doesn't necessarily mean that because you had to declare bankruptcy that you're a bad person.
Yeah, it's really, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
No, please do.
It's really hard when you're going through something like that to be honest with people and open with your situation, because you feel, like you failed. You feel like, you shouldn't have found yourself in that position. And some reasons are in your control and some are out of your control. And that's why it's so, we love, my husband and I, Marco, love doing what we do, because we really, when we talk with sellers and when we talk with buyers, we really have the perspective of being in their shoes. We know what it's like. We know what it's like to have hit roadblocks and to have had surprises that you didn't expect. And so many of our buyers and sellers are, really great people with great jobs and great incomes, and they've just have hit roadblocks that have slowed down their process to be able to either buy or move on. Whatever the scenario might be. And it's great to be able to come to them with that perspective. For instance, we have a buyer right now who, was hit very hard in the pandemic. He was in the event, he was pretty high up in the event lighting business. So you can imagine that industry disappeared overnight with COVID. And he's been amazing. He's been open with us. He's kept communication the whole time. He kept up on payments as long as he could. When he couldn't, he was very proactive with keeping in touch with us. He's made up in payments, and but it's affecting his ability to actually secure a mortgage right now, because of that time. And he had to switch careers, and he has to rebuild. And so we're right in the process right now of doing everything we can to try and get him to stay in that house. We know what it's like. I know there are a lot of investors that don't necessarily go into it. I know you guys have spoken to it before, that don't necessarily go into it really wanting their buyers to succeed. But I learned from you guys, and that's always been your top priority. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, and they have to take responsibility for their own actions. But by the same token, I know, and I've learned from you, that it's really, and because of our own personal experience, it's really important for us to do as much as we can to get them to cross the finish line.
To give them every chance that we can to move forward and be successful and start building that wealth by officially becoming the homeowner. Now, you've been, as you alluded to, you've been on both sides of the transaction. So you've bought a home with us through our rent to home program, and you sold a home or a condo. We bought it. Going through both of those experiences, what one lesson did you learn? Probably one lesson for each one. If there was a different lesson that you learned for each one, I think the listeners would be curious to hear that.
The lesson, let's start with the lesson of selling. That there was an option other than conventional. I mean, I run into it all the time. People don't even know that it's a possibility. They don't even know there's other options rather than, calling a realtor and marketing the property or for sale by owner. And there's a lot of reasons why people don't want to sell immediately, well, whether it be tax purposes, whether it be, they don't need the cash and they just want to make as much profit from their property as they can. So I had no idea that it was an option. So for selling, that was probably the biggest thing. For buying, I think that there's always a solution. Well, I wouldn't say always, because it's, not everything can be fixed, but for the most part, with this creative buying and selling, there's so many pivots that can be made that you don't. There's generally always something that you can get out of the scenario. Even, with the house, we had some difficulty securing our mortgage with the house that we purchased. And, you and Chris and you guys, worked with getting me into contact with people to try and get it done. And we got it done. And it wasn't cheap. It wasn't cheap. We wanted to stay in the house. It was important to us. It wasn't cheap, but it put us in a position where we could at least secure the house, capture the equity that we'd had, because obviously at that point we'd had some equity in the house. Not only what we'd already put into it, but the time had passed. And so we were able to capture that equity and then be able to refinance when we could. So
that's one of Denise. That's one of the things that I've been kind of screaming from the rooftops with all of our buyers, that look, it's not easy.
Yep.
We're not pretending it's going to be easy buying a home, getting it, especially when you get a little bit further down the line. It's not easy, but in the end, it's worth it. That's why we work hand in hand with our buyers. So now we've dove into that a little bit. Tell us about what you're doing now on a daily basis. What are you doing now? I know a lot has changed and evolved over the years, but I think the listeners would be curious because, look, you're operating. You're an investor operating in the same area that we are. We have the abundance mindset. There's more than enough deals to go around for everyone. So we want to have other people that are in this market helping buyers and sellers. So tell a little bit about what you specialize in and what you're doing current day.
Yep. So yeah, you guys have always been great with, we learned from you. We took the QLS, we did all the studies that all the buyers and sellers and scripts and all of that, and we learned from you. And you guys have always been incredibly open with being able to, with reaching out and helping out when you could, and that's been huge for us. And yeah, there's enough for everyone to go around. Rarely do I run into anyone, every once in a while, but rarely do I run into anyone that's contacted the same person or, but we are still lease optioning. We hit a few bumps in the road as far as what we were able to dedicate to it time wise, with some personal things that were going on, but we've continued to lease option. I think at the most we had three homes. We're talking a little bit of insider industry jargon here. What is you're buying homes on a lease option? That's what you mean, right? Or subject to, yeah, exactly.
Okay,
that's
or you're closing. Yeah, you're closing on them and buying them subject to the existing loan.
Right. Some of them lease option. Okay. And essentially placing buyers and sellers, exactly what we were doing. Now we've had to pivot with the pandemic. We've had to pivot some, and we've had to, generally we didn't put any money into properties. We've had to put some money into property and potentially sell conventionally and all that. So we're playing within the market essentially with whatever we have and whatever seems to be the best solution for that particular scenario. That's what we're doing, really. And that doesn't look the same with every property.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you. That actually leads me perfectly. I didn't even plan this, but your answer leads perfectly to the next question. What trend are you noticing right now in the market and within your business? I think within your business is what I'm more interested in, because everyone has an opinion of the market and what's going to happen and everything.
Yeah,
So, what
yeah.
in your business, what is a trend that you're noticing?
Well, I think there's definitely been a lot of, people are in less need of looking for unconventional sale, with what we found, because everything's selling so quickly and so easily. So there has been a little bit more difficulty for us personally in securing new lease options. But the lease options that we do have pivoted so many times that it's created um, various scenarios of being able to pick up more profit, which is very, very interesting. It's not necessarily what you expect. And in some cases, it's not what you want necessarily for the other person, but it's what you end up with. Um, so yeah. So I don't know if I answered your question, but
That's it. Yeah, you did actually. You did. You did. What we're noticing in our business, there's the conventional world is hotter than others, but there are still people that are going through challenges that for
yep,
whatever reason it doesn't work, that they're not able to sell conventionally on the open market. And of course, there's always going to be buyers that can't get a
of
conventional loan
course.
today, no matter what the market does. So finally, Denise, in wrapping up here, the final question and my favorite question is, why is it not just a transaction to you? In other words, why do you give a shit?
Well, I mean, I think we touched on this a little bit already. We were these people that we deal with as far as buyers and sellers. As a seller, we were these people that were afraid, and I've never heard of this before. How can this be real? How can this be true? Is this a scam? All those fears, because we were afraid of the same thing. And on the other side of that, as buyers, um, you know, are we getting ourselves into a situation that we can't get out of? Um, are we putting the cart before the horse? And all those fears that you come to the table with as buyers and sellers, we've lived it and we know it. And like I said, with these buyers right now, that we've already extended for them, and extending again is probably going to result in an increase in price for them. But they have so much equity to capture, that we want both. At this point, it's fair that they share some of the equity, because we're giving them an excessive amount of time, and closing the gap with us. We're left with less time for the seller, and but at the same time, they want the house at all costs, and we know
Mm-hmm.
what that's like. We know what it's like to hear, okay, you're gonna might have some issues in getting your mortgage and going to bed with a pit in your stomach. We know what that feels like. So I think we just bring something different to the table for our buyers and sellers, because we literally have walked in their shoes, and we want to help people. Essentially, we want to help people and
Well,
make a little
that's
profit along the way.
of course. This isn't a charity here. This isn't a non-for-profit. So I appreciate your candid answers, and that's gonna be another episode, another wonderful episode in the books here of Not Just a Transaction. Now, if you're a buyer that's curious about buying through our rent to own program, head to our website, pre property with a Y solutions with an S.com, prepropertysolutions.com. Make sure you watch the video that we have right on the homepage that goes over how our rent to own program works. And then if it is a fit for you, make sure you check out all of our properties and sign up for our new property updates. Now, if you're a seller who is interested in learning about creative ways that we buy property, please head to the same website. That's prepropertysolutions.com and fill out a contact us form. Someone from our team will be in touch with you real soon. Denise, once again, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Not Just a Transaction, and hopefully our paths will cross more often. Hopefully we see more of each other in the coming years.
Thanks, Nick. I'll see you soon. Hopefully next QLS.
Hopefully, yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there in person. Yeah, I think so. Might be. Thank you. Thanks for listening to another episode of Not Just a Transaction. If you want to learn more on selling a home, buying a home, or resources to learn more, head on over to our website at originalre.com.